What if I told you that some of the medications you've been taking for years, the ones you trust, may be putting extra strain on your heart right now? Over the years, I've worked with thousands of patients dealing with heart problems, and I can tell you something most people are never told. Some of the damage I've seen wasn't caused by diet, it wasn't smoking, and it wasn't genetics. It was medications. Medications people trusted, medications they took every day, believing they were protecting their health, while something else was happening beneath the surface. And the difficult part is, you don't feel it right away, because after 60, your body handles medications very differently. What once helped you can slowly start working against you. And today, I want to walk you through 5 very common medications that deserve a closer look, especially after 60. But here's what concerns me most. By the time symptoms appear, this process has often been building for years, and most people never connect it back to the very pills they've been relying on. That's why what I'm about to share can change the way you look at your medications. I've spent decades sitting across from patients, reviewing their prescriptions, and noticing patterns others missed. Small clues, subtle shifts, changes that build quietly inside the body. Because medications don't act in isolation, they interact with your body's chemistry, especially as you age. Your liver slows down, your kidneys filter differently, nutrient levels change, and your heart becomes more sensitive to these shifts. So while a medication may solve one problem, it can create another, sometimes affecting blood vessels, sometimes altering minerals your heart depends on, sometimes increasing strain without any clear warning. And when multiple medications combine, these effects can compound in ways that are rarely explained. That's what we're going to uncover today. Not to scare you, but to give you clarity. Because once you understand what's happening inside your body, you can ask better questions and make safer decisions. I remember a patient of mine, Robert, 68. He had been on a statin for nearly a decade. Every checkup looked good on paper. His cholesterol was under control. He was told he was doing everything right, and he believed it. But over time, something changed. His energy dropped. His muscles felt weaker, and there was a kind of fatigue that didn't match his lifestyle. And this is where it becomes important. Statins don't just lower cholesterol. They also reduce something called CoQ10, a compound your body uses to produce energy at the cellular level. Your heart depends on that energy every second. It doesn't rest. It doesn't slow down. And when CoQ10 levels drop, your heart doesn't get the same support it used to. In younger people, the body can sometimes compensate, but after 60, that buffer starts to fade. Your natural CoQ10 levels are already declining with age, so when a statin lowers it further, the effect becomes more noticeable. This can lead to muscle weakness, but more importantly, it can affect how efficiently your heart pumps over time. Now let me be clear, statins can be life-saving. I've prescribed them many times. This is not about fear, it's about awareness. Because when Robert and I looked deeper, we realized something simple. No one had ever talked to him about CoQ10. No one had explained that while we were protecting one part of his cardiovascular system, we might be placing strain on another. And that's where things shifted. We didn't stop his medication. We didn't make drastic changes. We simply supported his body differently and asked better questions. And over time, his energy began to return, his strength improved, and his heart function stabilized. After 60, your body is no longer operating with the same reserves. Small imbalances matter more. Small deficiencies show up faster, and when something as essential as cellular energy is affected, your heart feels it first. So if you're taking a statin, the question isn't, should I stop? The better question is my body being supported while I'm taking it? Because sometimes, it's not just about lowering numbers. It's about protecting the system as a whole. A few months after Robert and I adjusted his routine, he came back and told me something interesting. His energy was improving, but there was still this pressure he couldn't quite explain. Not pain, just a heaviness that would come and go. So we looked closer, and that's when we found something most people overlook. He had been taking over-the-counter pain relievers almost daily, just something simple for joint stiffness. Something he believed was completely harmless. Ibuprofen, naproxen, the kind of pills millions of people take without a second thought. And this is where the problem often begins, because these medications feel safe, they're familiar, they bring quick relief, and after 60, they quietly become part of your daily routine. But they don't just act on your joints, they affect your blood vessels too. NSAIDs work by blocking enzymes called COX pathways. This reduces inflammation and pain, but at the same time, it also interferes with signals that help your blood vessels stay relaxed. And when those signals are reduced, your blood vessels begin to tighten. And when that happens, your blood pressure starts to rise. Now, this doesn't show up all at once. It builds gradually, easy to miss. But over time, that added pressure forces your heart to work harder than it should. For someone younger, the body can often compensate. But after 60, your arteries are already less flexible. So even a small increase in pressure becomes more significant. And there's another layer to this. NSAIDs can also affect how your kidneys handle fluid, which means your body may start retaining more fluid, adding even more strain on your heart. So instead of just relieving pain, you may be increasing cardiovascular stress from multiple directions. When Robert understood this, everything started to make sense. That heaviness wasn't random. It was his body responding to something he thought was helping him. And again, this wasn't about panic. It was about awareness. We didn't tell him to live in pain. We adjusted how he used it, reduced frequency, explored safer alternatives. Because after 60, it's not just about whether something works. It's about what it's doing in the background while it works. So, if you're taking these regularly, the question becomes, is this helping my pain, but quietly making my heart work harder? By the time Robert came in for his next visit, something else came up. His chest discomfort had improved. His energy was better. But now, he mentioned something that seemed completely unrelated: persistent acid reflux. He told me he'd been taking a medication for it every single day. It worked well. No more burning, no more discomfort, so he never questioned it. And that's very common, because once something works, we tend to trust it long term. But here's where things change. Some acid reflux medications, especially proton pump inhibitors, don't just reduce stomach acid. They also change how your body absorbs key nutrients. Your stomach acid isn't just there to cause discomfort. It plays a critical role in breaking down food and absorbing vitamins and minerals, especially B12 and magnesium. And when that acid is suppressed for long periods, absorption begins to drop. Now here's why this matters for your heart. Magnesium helps regulate the electrical signals that keep your heartbeat steady. When levels fall, those signals can become unstable. Vitamin B12 supports nerve function and blood health. When it drops, you may start to feel fatigue, weakness, and subtle changes in how your body functions. And the challenge is, you don't feel this happening right away. It develops slowly. And after 60, your ability to absorb these nutrients is already reduced. So when a medication further limits absorption, the effect becomes much more noticeable. That's when symptoms begin to show up: irregular heartbeat, low energy, muscle cramps, a general feeling that something isn't quite right, even if tests don't immediately show a clear cause. When Robert and I connected this, it changed everything. That small pill he had trusted for years suddenly looked different. Again, this wasn't about stopping it blindly. These medications can be helpful, but long-term use without awareness, that's where problems begin. So we started simple. We checked his levels, made small adjustments, supported what his body was missing, and gradually, those subtle symptoms began to improve. Because sometimes, it's not the condition anymore. It's what's been happening underneath the treatment. So if you've been taking acid reflux medication for years, the question isn't just, is it working? It's, what might it be taking away from my body? At this point, Robert felt like he was finally starting to understand his body again. His energy was better. His pressure felt more stable. But there was still one more piece we hadn't fully explored yet. He had been on a blood thinner for years, warfarin. And like many patients, he saw it as essential. It was prescribed to prevent clots, to protect him from stroke, something he believed should never be questioned. And in many cases, that's true. But there's another side to it that often isn't discussed clearly. Warfarin works by blocking vitamin K. Most people associate vitamin K with clotting. But there's another form, vitamin K2, that plays a very different role inside your body. Vitamin K2 helps direct calcium. It tells calcium where to go, and just as importantly, where not to go. It helps move calcium into your bones, where it belongs, and helps keep it out of your arteries, where it can become a problem. And this is where things begin to change. When vitamin K2 activity is reduced over long periods, that guidance system weakens, and calcium can start settling in places it shouldn't, like your blood vessels. This process is called vascular calcification. You don't feel it happening, but gradually, the arteries become stiffer, less flexible, less responsive. And as that happens, your heart has to work harder to push blood through them. Now again, this doesn't mean the medication is wrong. Warfarin can be life-saving, but there is a trade-off that isn't always fully explained, especially after 60, when your arteries are already changing with age. When Robert understood this, it shifted how he looked at his treatment. Not fear, awareness. We didn't stop his medication. That would have been dangerous. But we started asking better questions. We explored whether alternatives were appropriate. We monitored more closely. Because medicine isn't just about preventing one problem. It's about understanding the full picture. And sometimes, protecting one system can place stress on another. So, if you're on a blood thinner like warfarin, the question isn't, should I stop? It's this: am I having the right conversation about long-term effects, not just short-term protection? By now, Robert had started to see a pattern. Every medication he trusted had a benefit, but also a side he had never fully been told about. And then we came to the last one: calcium supplements. He told me, "Doctor, I've been taking these for years. My bones need them." And he's right. After 60, bone density declines. The risk of fractures increases. So adding calcium feels like the responsible choice. It feels protective. But calcium doesn't automatically go where you expect it to go. Your body needs a system to direct it, because calcium has two very different paths. One leads to your bones, where it strengthens structure. The other leads to your arteries, where it can create stiffness over time. And without the right signals, your body can struggle to manage that balance. This is where vitamin D3 and vitamin K2 come in. Vitamin D helps your body absorb calcium, but vitamin K2 helps guide it, directing it toward your bones instead of your blood vessels. Without enough K2, that guidance system weakens, and calcium can begin to accumulate in the arteries. Just like we discussed earlier, this builds slowly. You don't feel it. But over time, arteries become harder, less flexible. And when that happens, your heart has to work harder. That's where the concern begins. Now let me be clear. Calcium itself is not the problem. Your body needs it. But isolated supplementation, without proper balance, can create unintended effects, especially after 60, when your body is already changing. When Robert heard this, he paused. Because for years, he believed he was doing something purely beneficial. And in many ways, he was. But he didn't have the full picture. So we adjusted his approach, focused more on dietary sources when possible, made sure his body had what it needed to properly use that calcium. And just as importantly, made sure nothing was working against his heart in the process. Because sometimes, it's not about adding more, it's about making sure what you're already taking is going where it should. At this point, Robert looked at me and said something I hear often. "Doctor, I had no idea any of this was happening." And I told him something I want you to hear clearly. This is not about blaming medications. It's about understanding them. Because the goal isn't to remove what's helping you. It's to make sure nothing is working against you at the same time. So here's what I want you to do. Write this down. Not in your head, not later. Actually write it down. Start with a full medication review. Every pill you take, prescription, over-the-counter, supplements, lay them out in front of you. Because interactions don't just happen between two drugs. They happen across your entire system. And after 60, your body becomes much more sensitive to those interactions. Now ask one simple question for each one. Is this still necessary? Today? Not when it was first prescribed. Not 5 years ago. Today. Because your body changes. Your needs change. But medications often stay the same, unless someone questions them. So take it one step further. Ask yourself, what is this medication taking from my body? Is it affecting a nutrient? Is it adding strain somewhere else? Is it solving one problem while creating another? This is where real awareness begins. And this is where your conversation with your doctor becomes powerful. Not a rushed visit, not a quick refill, a real conversation. Bring your list, sit down, and ask, is anything here affecting my heart over time? Should we be monitoring something alongside this? Are there better options for me at this stage of life? These aren't complicated questions, but they're rarely asked. And when they are, things begin to change. Because medicine works best when it's adjusted to you. Not just your diagnosis, but your age, your body, your current reality. And don't try to fix everything at once. Start small. One conversation, one adjustment, one step at a time. That's exactly what Robert did. He didn't panic. He didn't throw everything away. He became informed. And that's where control begins. When I saw Robert a few months later, something about him had changed. Not just his numbers, the way he walked into the room, calmer, more confident, more in control. He sat down and said, I feel like I understand my body again. And that's something I don't hear often enough. Because for a long time, Robert did what most people do. He trusted the system, followed instructions, took what he was given, and assumed that was the full answer. But over time, he realized something deeper. Health isn't just about following directions. It's about understanding what those directions are doing. He didn't stop his medications recklessly. He didn't ignore medical advice. He asked better questions, paid attention, worked with his doctor, and that changed everything. His energy came back. That pressure faded. His body felt more stable. But more importantly, he wasn't afraid anymore. Because fear often comes from not knowing. And when you begin to understand what's happening inside your body, that fear starts to fade. I remember at the end of that visit, he paused at the door and said, I wish I had known this 10 years ago. And I told him something I want you to remember. It's not about when you start, it's that you start. Because whether you're 60, 70, or beyond that, your body is still listening, still adapting, still capable of improving when you give it the right support. And sometimes, the biggest shift doesn't come from a new medication. It comes from finally seeing the full picture of the ones you're already taking. Because when you see that clearly, you stop just following a plan. You start owning your health. So let's bring this together. We talked about 5 very common medications: statins, pain relievers like ibuprofen, acid reflux medications, blood thinners like warfarin, and calcium supplements. All helpful, but each with something that isn't always discussed. So let me ask you one simple question. Have you ever looked at your medications this way before? Not just what they're doing for you, but what they might be taking from you. Because that one shift in thinking can change everything. If this gave you a new perspective, share it with someone you care about. Because most people are never told this. And sometimes, one conversation is all it takes to prevent years of silent strain. And if you want more clear, practical insight like this, make sure you subscribe and stay connected. And one last thing, this is not about stopping your medication. Never make changes on your own. These treatments can be necessary, even life-saving. This is about awareness, so you can ask better questions, have better conversations, and make decisions with your doctor, not without them. Because your heart has been working for you every second of your life, quietly, consistently, without asking for anything in return. The least we can do is start paying attention.